Chapter 3 of Free Air. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Free Air by Sinclair Lewis. Chapter 3. A Young Man in a Raincoat. Huh! Such an auto! Look! It break my harness already. $2 that cost you to mend it. The auto is too heavy, stormed Zolzac. All right, all right! Only for heaven's sakes, go get another harness, Claire shrieked. $5.50 dot will be in all, Zolzac grinned. Claire was standing in front of him. She was thinking of other drivers, poor people in old cars, who had been at the mercy of this golden-hearted one. She stared past him in the direction from which she had come. Another motor was in sight. It was a tin beetle of a car, that agile, cheerful, rut-jumping model known as a bug, with a home-tacked, home-painted tin cowl and tail covering the striped chassis of a little cheap teal car. The lone driver wore an old black raincoat with an atrocious corduroy collar, and a new plaid cap in the Harry Lauder tartan. The bug skipped through mud where the Boltwoods Gomez had slogged and rolled. Its pilot drove up behind her car and leaped out. He trotted forward to Claire and Zolzac. His eyes were 27 or 8, but his pink cheeks were 20. And when he smiled, shyly, radiantly, he was no age at all, but eternal boy. Claire had a blurred impression that she had seen him before, someplace along the road. Stuck? He inquired, not very intelligently. How much is Adolph charging you? He wants $3.50 and his harness broke, and he wants $2. Oh, so he's still working that old gag. I've heard all about Adolph. He keeps that harness for pulling out cars, and it always busts. The last time, though, he only charged 6 bits to get it mended. Now let me reason with him. The young man turned with vicious quickness, and for the first time Claire heard pidgin German. German as it is spoken between Americans who have never learned it, and Germans who have forgotten it. Schon 600 times ich höre all about the way you are been doing Otto Zolzac, you verfluchter Schweinhund, and I'll set the sheriff on you. Dot ain't true. Maybe einmal die Woche kommt somebody and ich muss die Arbeit immer lassen und in die Regen ausgehen und seh mal how die boots sind mit mud covered. $2, it don't pay for the boots. Now that's plenty and enough out of you. Seien die Boots, verdammt, and mach das du fortgehst. Muddy boots, hell. Put my line egg in the boots and beat it. Verleicht. Maybe I'll by golly arrest you myself. Weißt du, I'm a special deputy sheriff. The young man stood stockily. He seemed to swell as his somewhat muddy hand was shaken directly at, under, and about the circumference of Adolph Zolzac's hairy nose. The farmer was stronger, but he retreated. He took up the reins. He whined, Don't I get nothing I break the harness? Sure, you get 10 years, and you get out. From 30 yards up the road, Zolzac flung back, You think you're pretty damn smart. That was his last serious reprisal. Clumsily, as one not used to it, the young man lifted his cap to Claire, showing straight, wiry, rope-colored hair, brushed straight back from a rather fine forehead. Gee, I was sorry to have to swear and holler like that, but it's all Adolph understands. Please don't think there's many of the folks around here like him. They say he's the meanest man in the county. I'm immensely grateful to you, but do you know much about motors? How can I get out of this mud? She was surprised to see the youngster blush. His clear skin flooded, his engaging smile came out again, and he hesitated. Let me pull you out. She looked from her hulking car to his mechanical fleet. He answered back, I can do it all right. I'm used to the gumbo, regular mud hen. Just add my power to yours. Have you a tow rope? No, I never thought of bringing one. I'll get mine. She walked with him back toward his bug. It lacked not only top and side curtains, but even windshield and running board. It was a toy, a cardboard box on toothpick axles. Strapped to the bulging back was a wicker suitcase, partly covered by tarpaulin. From the seat peered a little furry face. "A cat!" she exclaimed, as he came up with a wire rope, extracted from the tin back. "Yes, she's the captain of the boat. I'm just the engineer." "What is her name?" Before he answered, the young man strode ahead to the front of her car, Claire obediently trotting after him. He stooped to look at her front axle. He raised his head, glanced at her, and he was blushing again. "Her name is Vere de Vere," he confessed. Then he fled back to his bug. He drove it in front of the Gomez dep. The hole in the road itself was as deep as the one on the edge of the cornfield, where she was stuck. But he charged it. She was fascinated by his skill. Where she would for a tenth of a second have hesitated while choosing the best course, he hurled the bug straight at the hole, plunged through with sheets of glossy black water arching on either side, then viciously twisted the car to the right, to the left, and straight again as he followed the tracks with the solidest bottoms. Strapped above the tiny angle iron step which replaced his running board was an old spade. He dug channels in front of the four wheels of her car so that they might go up inclines, instead of pushing against the straight walls of mud he had thrown up. On these inclines he strewed the brush she had brought, halting to ask, with head alertly lifted from his stooped huddle in the mud, "Did you have to get this brush yourself?" "Yes, horrid wet." He merely shook his head in commiseration. He fastened the tow rope to the rear axle of his car, to the front of hers. "Now will you be ready to put on all your power as I begin to pull?" he said casually, rather respectfully. When the struggling bug had pulled the wire rope taut, she opened the throttle. The rope trembled. Her car seemed to draw sullenly back. Then it came out, really out, which is the most joyous sensation any motorist shall ever know. An excitement over actually moving again, as fast as any healthy young snail, she drove on, the young man ahead grinning back at her. Nor did she stop, nor he, till both cars were safe on the merely thick mud a quarter of a mile away. She switched off the power, and suddenly she was in a whirlwind of dizzy, sickening tiredness. Even in her abandonment to exhaustion, she noticed that the young man did not stare at her, but, keeping his back to her, removed the tow rope and stowed it away in his bug. She wondered whether it was tact or yokelish indifference. Her father spoke for the first time since the Galahad of the tin bug had come. "How much do you think we ought to give this fellow?" Now, of all the cosmic problems yet unsolved, not cancer, nor the future of poverty, are the flustering questions, but these twain. Which is worse, not to wear evening clothes at a party at which you find everyone else dressed, or to come in evening clothes to a house where, it proves, they are never worn? And, which is worse, not to tip when a tip has been expected, or to tip when the tip is an insult? In discomfort of spirit and wetness of ankles, Claire shuddered. "Oh dear, I don't believe he expects us to pay him. He seems like an awfully independent person. Maybe we'd offend him if we offered." "The only reasonable thing to be offended at in this vale of tears is not being offered money." "Just the same. Oh dear, I'm so tired. But good little Claire will climb out and be diplomatic." She pinched her forehead to hold in her crackling brain, and wobbled out into new scenes of mud and wetness. But she came up to the young man with the most rain-washed and careless of smiles. "Won't you come back and meet my father? He's terribly grateful to you, as I am. And may we you've worked so hard, and about saved our lives. May I pay you for that labor? We're really much indebted." "Oh, it wasn't anything. Tickled to death if I could help you." He heartily shook hands with her father, and he droned, "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Boltwood. Mr. Boltwood. My name is Milton Daggett. See you have a New York license on your car. We don't see but mighty few of those through here. Glad I could help you." "Ah, yes, Mr. Daggett." Mr.